Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. Great to have you with us again.
Yeah, welcome back.
We know you tune in to get smart, fast on, fascinating subjects. And
Right.
today, well, we're definitely strapping in.
Yeah,
Well,
we're talking about a real aviation icon today.
absolutely, the
Uh-huh.
F-15 Eagle. What a machine.
It really is, and we've pulled together some great material to unpack this. We've got pieces from the nationalinterestmilitary.com for that sort of ground level view,
Yeah,
how stuff works for a good accessible breakdown, Wikipedia's big overview, naturally,
can't forget Wikipedia.
never.
Yeah.
And even some interesting threads from Reddit, the enthusiast perspective, plus Boeing's own take on the latest version, the F-15EX. So a really wide range of viewpoints.
Sounds great. So our mission, if you will, for this deep dive is pretty straightforward.
Hmm.
Figure out what made the F-15 so dominant, how it changed over, 50 years now?
Just about, yeah.
And take a peek at where it's headed. Okay, let's jump in. Where did this all start? The genesis of the Eagle. Right. So you got to rewind to the late 60s, early 70s. And you can't really talk about the F-15 without talking about Vietnam.
Ah, the lessons learned there, always crucial.
Crucial is right. The Air Force learned some tough lessons. For instance, their F-105 Thunder Chiefs, designed mainly as fighter bombers.
Right.
They found themselves surprisingly vulnerable to the older but more agile MiG-17s.
Which must have been a bit of an eye-opener.
Definitely. And even the F-4 Phantom II, which was, a very capable aircraft for its time.
Yeah, a workhorse.
It sometimes got outmaneuvered by the lighter MiG-21s in close-in fights.
Mm.
So all this really hammered home the need for a dedicated air superiority fighter, something built purely to hunt other planes.
Okay, so a clear gap identified from combat experience. And wasn't there a Soviet development around that time that kind of lit a fire under things, too?
Exactly. The MiG-25 Foxbat. When the Soviets unveiled that, its sheer speed and altitude capabilities,
Fact.
well, caused quite a stir in the West.
Right, the Foxbat scare.
Precisely. It looked like a huge leap forward for them, a high-speed interceptor that we needed an answer for. Now, initially, Robert McNamara, the defense secretary then, he pushed for a joint Navy and Air Force plane.
Ah, the commonality dream, often tricky.
Very tricky. And as often happens, the specific needs of the Air Force just diverged too much from the Navy's. So the F-15 became purely an Air Force project. McDonnell Douglas came up with the winning design, and, well, the Eagle was born.
Born for one main thing, right? Owning the sky.
That was the mission. Air superiority. Defeat enemy aircraft day or night, any weather. Total control of the air.
So what were the key ingredients, the tech, the design philosophy that made it so good?
Several big things. First, those engines.
Yeah.
Twin Pratt and Whitney F-100s. They gave it a thrust-to-weight ratio that was
Yeah.
just phenomenal for the era.
Better than 1-to-1, I've read.
In certain configurations, yeah.
Yeah.
The total thrust could actually exceed the plane's fully loaded weight. Think about that.
That's just raw power. It means you can.
You can accelerate like crazy. You can climb incredibly fast. You could even accelerate vertically at certain speeds. That ability to regain energy quickly in a fight, game-changing,
Huge advantage in a dogfight, I'd imagine.
massive. Then combine that power with a really smart airframe design. They use advanced materials, titanium, aluminum alloys to keep it light but very strong.
Mm-hmm.
And crucially, it had what's called low wing loading. Basically, big wings relative to its weight.
This translates to...
Agility, maneuverability. It could pull incredibly tight turns up to 9 Gs without bleeding off speed like older jets might. It could turn and burn.
So power and finesse, not just a drag racer.
Exactly. It could hit Mach 2.5 with the afterburners kicked in, sure, but it was nimble too.
Yeah.
And it could climb like a rocket, getting up to 30,000 feet in about 60 seconds. Huge for interception missions.
Wow. Okay, so incredible flight performance. What about the electronics, the weapons?
Also cutting edge for the time. It had advanced radar, obviously crucial for finding targets beyond visual range, and importantly, electronic warfare systems. Radar warning receivers, RWRs.
The pilot's ears.
Good way to put it. Lets them know if they're being painted by enemy radar.
Yeah.
And radar jammers to try and confuse those enemy signals. Brake missile locks.
Essential survival tools. And the gun. Wasn't there some initial plan for something really different?
Yeah, the GAU-7. It was supposed to use caseless ammunition, very advanced, but ran into development problems. So they went with the tried and true M61 Vulcan, a reliable 20mm Gatling gun.
Okay, so a powerful, agile, smart fighter. The specs sound amazing, but the real headline is that combat record, isn't it? It's almost unbelievable.
It really is. The headline figure you always hear is over 100 aerial victories claimed, with 0 F-15 losses in air-to-air combat. That's for the U.S. Air Force and key allies, especially the Israeli Air Force, since it ended service back in '72.
Over 100-0 across decades of conflicts. That's just dominant.
It's an absolutely unparalleled record for a fighter jet over such a long period.
Let's get into some specifics. I know there are some truly legendary stories about the F-15 in action.
Oh yeah, one of the most famous, almost mythical ones, involves an Israeli pilot, Zivi Nedivi, back in '83.
The one-wing landing.
That's the one. During a training exercise, his F-15D actually collided midair with an A-4 Skyhawk, tore one wing almost completely off.
Jeez.
Against all logic, really, relying on the lift generated by the remaining wing, the engine intakes, even the fuselage, and pure pilot skill. He managed to land it.
That's insane. I mean, how is that even physically possible?
Well, the investigation showed the wide fuselage and engine nacelles provided more lift than expected. But still, it was an incredible feat. It showed the plane's surprising ruggedness and actually spurred research into damage-tolerant flight controls.
Amazing. What else? I heard something about breaking speed records.
The Streak Eagle. That was in 1975. They took an early F-15A, stripped it down, no paint, non-essential gear removed, just pure performance.
Oh.
And it went out and smashed 8 different time-to-climb records. Beat the records previously held by the Soviet MiG-25, which was built for speed and altitude.
Just sending a message there.
Absolutely. And get this, its initial acceleration off the ground was apparently faster than the Saturn V moon rocket.
Faster than a Saturn V, seriously.
In his first few moments, yeah. Just shows the incredible thrust it had.
Okay, that's impressive. How about actual combat kills? Any unusual ones?
Well, during Desert Storm in '91, there was an F-15E Strike Eagle crew. They were trying to engage an Iraqi Mi-24 high-end helicopter gunship.
Right.
For whatever reason, they couldn't get a lock with their air-to-air missiles. So the weapons systems officer, the WSO in the back seat, guided a 2,000-pound laser-guided bomb, a GBU-10, onto the hind.
Used a bomb for an air-to-air kill.
Yep. Destroyed it. Talk about thinking outside the box. Shows the versatility of the Strike Eagle variant, too.
Definitely resourceful. And the Israelis use them extensively, right?
Hugely successful for the Israeli Air Force, particularly in the late '70s and early '80s over Lebanon. They racked up numerous kills against Syrian MiGs, MiG-21s, 23s, even some MiG-25s, and reportedly a helicopter, all without losing any F-15s in air combat.
That 100+0 record really holds up.
It does. And U.S. F-15s got kills, too. Over Kosovo in '99, F-15Cs shot down 4 Yugoslav MiG-29s.
Right, Fulcrums. Capable planes themselves.
They are. And Saudi F-15s downed Iraqi Mirage F-1s during Desert Storm. More recently, you see Saudi Eagles intercepting Houthi drones over Yemen using Sidewinders and AMRAAM missiles.
So it's adapted from fighting Cold War jets to taking out modern drones. Incredible lifespan. But obviously the F-15 flying today isn't the same one from 1972. It must have evolved quite a bit.
Oh, significantly. One of the biggest steps was the F-15E Strike Eagle, which came along in the 1980s.
That's the two-seater, more focused on ground attack, right?
Exactly. It's a dual-role fighter, still very capable in air-to-air, but optimized for deep strike air-to-ground missions in all weather, day or night. It got a more advanced radar, the APG-70, and crucially the Lantern pods for navigation and targeting at night and in bad weather.
So that really broadened its capabilities beyond just being an air superiority fighter.
Absolutely. And the Strike Eagle and later upgrades to other models made extensive use of conformal fuel tanks, CFTs.
Those tanks that fit along the fuselage.
Yeah, exactly. They blend into the airframe, they add a lot of fuel, extending range and endurance without taking up underwing pylons needed for weapons, and with less aerodynamic drag than traditional drop tanks.
Smart. More gas, more bombs.
Pretty much. The original air superiority models, the F-15C and D, they weren't left behind either. They got upgrades like the PP2000 program, more fuel, CFT capability, and then the MSIP, the Multi-Stage Improvement Program.
What did that involve?
Better computers, improved radar processing, ability to carry newer missiles like the AMRAAM, and significantly later on, some F-15Cs were retrofitted with ASA radars.
Ah, active electronically scanned array. That's a big leap, isn't it?
Huge leap. Much better range, tracking multiple targets, more resistant to jamming, keeps the older airframes relevant sensor-wise.
Were there even more ambitious plans for the C&D models?
There were concepts floated, yeah. Things like the 2040C Eagle or Golden Eagle, talk of carrying even more missiles, maybe incorporating some stealthy features. But ultimately, the age of the CD airframes kind of put a stop to those really extensive mods. The basic structure was just getting old.
Right. Metal fatigue is a real thing.
It is. Which leads us nicely into the F-15EX Eagle II.
The latest and greatest.
Exactly. Boeing basically took the production line they were using for advanced F-15s, sold to allies, incorporated all the latest TechMU cockpit displays, fly-by-wire controls, the newest AHISA radar, powerful mission computer, electronic warfare suite,
Uh-huh.
and offered it to the U.S. Air Force as a replacement for those aging F-15CDs. And the Air Force bought it.
So it's kind of the ultimate evolution of the original design, but packed with 21st century technology.
That's a good way to summarize it.
But as you said, those older C and D models, their time is coming to an end, isn't it? What are the challenges now, and what's the overall future look like?
Yeah, the F-15CD fleet is definitely aging out. The Air Force plans to retire them completely by 2026. The airframes have a lot of hours on them. Structural fatigue is a concern, and keeping them flying just gets more and more expensive.
We've seen them leave some famous bases already.
We have RAF Lakenheath in the UK, Kadena in Japan.
Hmm.
Those active-duty Eagle squadrons are gone. The last official active USAF F-15C flight was apparently back in January this year, 2025. The Air National Guard might fly them a bit longer, but the end is near for the CD.
And the Strike Eagles, the F-15Es.
They've got more life left in them. Younger airframes, still very capable. They're expected to serve into the 2030s, maybe longer with upgrades.
Okay, so looking further out, how does Boeing see air combat evolving, and where does the F-15EX fit into their picture?
Their vision, and the Air Force's too, really involves networks, connecting different platforms. Long-range weapons are key, and integrating manned aircraft with unmanned ones, loyal wingmen, that kind of thing.
Manned-unmanned teaming.
Right. In that picture, they see the F-15EX playing a really important role as, like, a missile truck, an arsenal plane. It can carry a huge number of air-to-air missiles, more than stealth fighters like the F-22 or F-35.
So the stealth fighters go in first, maybe gather targeting data, and the EX follows up with a massive volley of missiles.
That's one of the core concepts, yeah. Leveraging the EX's payload and range, networked with other assets.
Interesting how a design from the 70s finds this new role, but, the threat environment is always changing. I saw some chatter online on Reddit, actually, about hypersonic missiles maybe being a big threat to planes like the F-15EX or even carriers.
Yeah, that discussion is definitely out there. Hypersonic weapons missiles traveling at Mach 5 or higher are a focus for development by potential adversaries like China and Russia. And yes, people speculate about their potential to challenge existing defenses, including carrier groups and even advanced fighters.
Makes sense. Speed complicates defense.
It does. But as you often find in those same discussions, there are counter-arguments. Are these hypersonics the unstoppable magic bullets some portray them as? How effective are they really? What countermeasures are being developed? It's a complex, evolving picture, not quite as simple as hypersonics beat everything.
Good point. It's rarely that simple in defense tech. Okay, so wrapping this all up, what are the main things you think we, and you listening, should take away from this deep dive on the F-15?
Well, first, how it's designed was a direct response to real-world combat needs identified in Vietnam. Second, just how revolutionary its combination of power, agility, and eventually sensors was, leading to that incredible air superiority record.
That undefeated streak.
That streak, yeah. Third, its remarkable adaptability, evolving from a pure fighter to the multi-role Strike Eagle and constantly getting upgraded to stay relevant. And finally, while the original Eagles are fading out, the F-15EX shows the fundamental design still has legs, ready to take on new roles in a networked future battlefield. It's quite a legacy.
It really is a fantastic way to get up to speed on a true giant of military aviation history. We covered a lot of ground there.
We did. And it makes you think, doesn't it? Watching the F-15 go from a Cold War interceptor designed to dogfight MiGs to a networked missile carrier potentially facing hypersonic threats. What does that whole journey tell us about aerial warfare itself?
Good question.
How does that balance shift between the platform, the pilot, the technology, the strategy? As threats keep evolving, what are the enduring rules of gaining and keeping air superiority? Something to mull over.
Definitely something to think about. Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. Huge thanks to you for joining us and exploring the F-15 Eagle.
Always a pleasure. Fascinating aircraft.
Absolutely. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive and want us to keep bringing you more content like this, exploring complex topics and breaking them down, please do us a favor.
Yeah, hitting that like button, subscribing to the channel, maybe sharing it with someone else who'd find it interesting. It really does help us a lot.
It lets us know we're on the right track and helps us grow so we can tackle even more subjects for you. So thanks again for listening.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.